Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm Jeff Urban, the Education Director here at the Roosevelt Presidential Library and Museum. On behalf of the National Archives and Records Administration here at the Roosevelt Presidential Library and Museum, we'd like to thank you all for coming out today on the 11th Annual Hudson Valley History Reading Festival. We'd also like to thank the Friends of the Poughkeepsie Public Library District for partnering with us today. A special welcome to our virtual audience who is watching across our social media accounts today. And please note that at each talk, it'll have its own link that you can follow at the top of each hour. And those links are provided in the video descriptions of every online video. The entire schedule is there. Before we begin, I want to talk a little bit about the format for today. Many of you have been here before. I'm sure you probably know this better than I do, but we're going to go through it for the newbies. We will begin each talk at the top of the hour at 10, 11, 1, and 2, with a break at noon for lunch. And it just so happens Uncle Sam's Canteen is open. So if you want to stay really local, you can stay right here on site. Our authors will speak for roughly 30 to 40 minutes with a Q&A to follow if time permits. And then at about 45 minutes past the hour, we'll break for book signings in the lobby out there by the New Deal store. And each author will have their own table there. Then at the top of the hour, we start it all over again. Okay, so it'll be a cycle that goes through. And, you know, it's exciting to be here in the presence of these authors. I'm happy to share with you that I myself, after 12 hard years, have finally finished my first book. Yeah, right? Great, thank you. And it was such a rewarding experience, I'm going to actually read a second one, so that'll be good. Aren't you a little ashamed you applauded now? No, okay. So with that, let's introduce our first speakers today. We have Robert and Johanna Titus. They are journalists, authors, geologists, and longtime residents of the Hudson Valley and Catskills. They write regular geology columns for regional magazines and newspapers, and they maintain a blog, The Catskill Geologist, which you can find at thecatskillgeologist.com. They are the authors of several books, including The Hudson Valley in the Ice Age, The Catskills in the Ice Age, and The Catskills, A Geological Guide. Today, Team Titus, as they are affectionately known around these parts, will be speaking to us about their newest book, The Hudson River Schools of Art and Its Ice Age Origins. So without further ado, Team Titus. Almost did you did to me. There you go.
Well, good morning. It's an honor to be here and a rather humbling experience to be speaking here in a place where my husband and I have listened to and have had a chance to meet some of the world's most influential historians and authors. So we thank Cliff Lawby and we thank Bill Harris and Ed, and thank you all for coming. We've written several books about the Catskills, as you've heard. And we write books about Catskill and Hudson Valley geology mostly. And we've written more than 1,000 articles on the same subject for several magazines and newspapers, and we continue to write weekly in the Mountain Eagle group of newspapers, and those are in Greene and Schoharie counties. We have a very active Facebook page. Come see us, the Catskill Geologist, and a blog, thecatskillgeologist.com. But today we'd like to introduce our latest book, and this is really our premiere presentation of this new book just published. And it's the Hudson River Schools, plural, of art and their Ice Age origins. So let's tell you about that. Thomas Cole first arrived in the Catskills late in the summer of 1825, where he found a landscape that was still mostly wilderness. We believe Cole's first trip up the Hudson was influenced by an author, Washington Irving, who wrote, of course, the famous tale Rip Van Winkle in 1819. Irving begins his tale, "Whoever has made a voyage up the Hudson must remember the Catskill Mountains. Every change of season, every change of weather, indeed every hour of the day produces some change in the magical hues and shapes of these mountains." Cole sketched and painted that wilderness. His works became a new interpretation of landscape on the world stage, a landscape untamed, sublime, and a new, distinctly American type of art. The Hudson River School was born. Frederick Church became another leading figure in the Hudson River School. He was Thomas Cole's only student, belonging to the second generation of the Hudson River School artists, and is also thought to have been the most successful. He specialized in very large canvases, room-sized canvases, and painted wild scenes, not only of New York, but from locations all around the world. And then we have Sanford Robinson Gifford. Gifford grew up and lived in the city of Hudson, within sight of the Catskills. He is well known for his paintings of Catskill clove. All three men were also very concerned with conservation and the protection of wild places. This is Cole's painting from North-South Lake vicinity in 1844. And our thesis is that this is the area where the Hudson River School of Art, the early American literature of the Hudson Valley, and landscape architecture, the three schools, came into existence to form our unique Hudson Valley culture, and that it was the glaciers, the geological processes of the most recent ice age, that are responsible. It's a rather extraordinary claim and requires some extraordinary evidence. So Robert's going to try and give you some of that evidence.
And good morning from me. Well, the ice advanced. What a remarkable thing it is. Wave your arm back and forth and realize that 20,000 years ago, this space was filled with ice of a glacier. What an incredible claim that is. Speaking of incredible claims, the ice advanced, and some of the evidence for that advance, some of the compelling evidence of that advance are the scratches that were left behind by the advancing glaciers. At their bottoms, they had cobbles and boulders, which they dragged across the surface of the bedrock beneath them, and that created these scratches. Those scratches have compass directions, and geologists always have compasses with them, and you can determine the compass direction of those scratches. You can document the movement of the ice so many thousands of years ago. Johanna and I have spent a lot of time at North Lake, the campground, which is adjacent to South Mountain and Catterskill Clove. And we walked the area, every trail, everywhere we could go with compasses. And every time we found a glacial striation, a glacial scratch, we wrote down the compass direction that we determined. And we documented what the glaciers did at North Lake. And the arrows on this map are that documentation. The arrows record the compass directions of the glacial striations that we located. They form a pattern. The glacier came down the Hudson Valley and went up Catterskill Clove, encircled South Mountain, and crashed into another glacier coming from the other direction. In short, this landscape was intensely glaciated. It was intensely sculpted and by the advance of the ice. That's central argument of our story today. Well, let's focus on that map. The big arrow that you see there pointing to the south is the Hudson Valley Glacier rising up against the wall of Manitou, the Catskill Front. Perhaps you are aware of the Catskill Front. It's a north to south, straight as an arrow wall of bedrock rising above the Hudson Valley, and it was created by the passage of the Hudson Valley Glacier. It inspired art, and Johanna is going to tell you about that art.
This is Thomas Cole's view of the escarpment, the Catskill Front. And we have coined a new phrase, and we're going to say it several times. So here it is. No North Lake glaciers, or no glaciers, no painting. In 1823, James Fenimore Cooper wrote about the Catskill Escarpment in the Pioneers. His character, Natty Bumppo, describes it saying, "Why, up in the Catskills, there's a place in the hills I used to climb to when I wanted to see the carryings on of the whole world. You know, the Catskills, lad, for you must have seen them as you followed the river up from York, looking as blue as a piece of sky and holding the clouds on their tops. The place I mean is next to the river, where one of the ridges juts out just a little further than the rest, and where the rocks fall the best part of 1,000 feet." "What do you see when you get there?" asked Edwards, Natty's companion. "Creation," says Natty. "All creation." And this is Frederick Church's view over the edge of the escarpment. It's called Sunrise in the Catskills, done in 1847. It's very hard to portray unless you have a panoramic view of the 70-mile panorama that is the Catskill Front. And so Frederick Church decided to let the viewer imagine this image hidden in the clouds, as it often still is in the early morning.
Well, back to our map. The focus now is on Catterskill Clove. Have you ever been to Catterskill Clove? I hope you have. If not, I hope you'll go, and I hope you'll go soon. The blue trail on the north side of the canyon runs right about there. And all along that trail, you can gaze to the south, deep 1,000 feet down into the bottom of the Clove. It is truly breathtaking landscape. We like to think of it as the finest looking landscape east of the Rocky Mountains. Surely it attracted artists going there to paint, and indeed it did. Now, the glacier passed up the Clove following these arrows, and they affected the landscape beneath them. This is Sunset Rock, which is one of the most picturesque spots within the canyon. It's a must-go-to location. And any experienced geologist on the planet Earth would look at that ledge of rock and see two things. The top has been scoured by the passage of the ice. There's so much sand at the bottom of a glacier. It smooths it off. It polishes, it scours that surface. And then just beyond that is an abrupt fracture. A great mass of rock has been plucked loose and dragged off to the west. We always like to compare this to Gene Shepard's story of his friend who stuck his tongue against the metal pole in the middle of winter in Hammond, Indiana, and the tongue stuck. Some of you are Gene Shepard fans. I can tell. We can spot each other from a mile away, can't we? The glacier passed across that ledge. The ice stuck to the bedrock, and the ice moved to the west and yanked great blocks of rock out of the ground and carried them off. That's a glaciated landscape. Here's a diagrammatic view of what we call scour and pluck. The glacier comes up the north slope of a bedrock knob and scours that surface. And then as it passes across the top of the knob, it yanks rock out of the ground. It creates two slopes, a gentle slope and a steep slope, both of them picturesque. And Johanna will tell you about that.
Well, here's another view of Sunset Rock, and it's a popular hiking destination, and it's a scour and pluck feature. The glacier advanced from the left and plucked to the right. And this is how Sanford Robinson Gifford portrayed it in the 1850s. Again, no glaciers, no painting. This is a view of what is called Inspiration Point in Catterskill Cove today. And the same view as Gifford painted it in the 1850s.
Well, let's follow our glaciers. Let's keep in the trail of these glaciers. What a marvelous thing it is to go out into the field and looking for those glacial striations, literally being able to step in the footprints of a glacier and to follow them across the landscape. We're now watching the glacier come out of Catterskill Cove and turn to the northeast. Glaciers can go north and cross South Lake and then encounter an oncoming glacier coming from the east. We had two glaciers collide with each other. Isn't that a marvelous thing to contemplate? Well, the glacier from the east carved North Lake. The glacier from the southwest carved South Lake, literally by scouring into the bedrock and scouring out the basins that these two lakes created. The collision of the glaciers compressed earth in front of the oncoming glaciers and created the peninsula that lies between the two lakes. We see beautiful landscape, historic landscape that people have been visiting for centuries, and we find an Ice Age explanation for that landscape. This is South Lake today, taken from the North Shore, and that basin has an Ice Age origin. Oh, wait, I get this one. Ah, that's right. I get to show a couple pictures too. And this is Thomas Cole, 1825. He was, this is one of his earliest paintings in the vicinity. This is a lake with dead trees, and it qualifies as one of the earliest examples of the Hudson River School of Art. It has an Ice Age origin that we are talking about. Well, you see, what I'm saying and what we are saying is that all around South Mountain, there's a circumnavigation of glaciers. The whole landscape that we call North Lake frequently, or South Mountain, is the product of intense glaciation. It was sculpted by this intense glaciation, and that sculpted landscape inspired the art. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. So this is the view from Sunset Rock, and I'm going to confuse you. There are two Sunset Rocks that are pretty close to each other in the Catskills on different trails. And this is the one that is closer to North and South Lake, as you can see, and it has a beautiful view of North and South Lake, a very, very favorite of a lot of people to go there and to take pictures or to paint. Thomas Cole painted it in 1844. Jasper Cropsey, another artist of the Hudson River School, and this is his version from 1855. And Sanford Robinson Gifford in 1862. And this one is our favorite one. And you can see a little bit of that panoramic view in front of the Catskill front in that painting. But remember, no glaciers, then no paintings.
The climate changed. Good global warming occurred, and it bailed us out of the Ice Age. The wave your arm through space and there is nothing here but ice ended. The glaciers melted. Oh boy, did they melt. You know what? There was at least a half a mile of ice rising above us right here, right where you're sitting. Look up into the sky. You'd have to go a half a mile up before you got to the end of the glacier, and it all melted. Woo-hoo-hoo. That's a lot of meltwater. And the term we use is meltwater. What an astonishing thing it is to contemplate. All of that ice melting, all of that meltwater pouring down the Hudson Valley and eventually into the Atlantic Ocean. You can see the effect of that deglaciation in this aerial view. I hitched a ride on a plane one day and took this picture of Tatterskill Clove. The blue trail that I want you to walk on is there. This is the canyon of Tatterskill Clove. Absolutely scenic wonder. You have to go and see it yourself if you haven't. But you begin to appreciate what happened here at the end of the Ice Age when you look at Palinville in the foreground. This is the town of Palinville. And you don't notice it. You have to have the trained eye of a geologist, but you're looking at a fan of sediment. The top of the fan is right there, and the fan is spread out before the top and fills that whole area of the western Hudson Valley. It is all sediment that was eroded from Tatterskill Clove and carried by Tatterskill Creek down to be deposited where Palinville is built today. Suddenly you come to understand that at the end of the Ice Age, there was so many great torrents of meltwater that they carved Tatterskill Clove and turned the bedrock that had been there into sand and deposited that sand in the fan at the bottom of the clove. Let that sink in for a few minutes. Raging, foaming, pounding, thundering of torrents of ice water cascading down the canyon, eroding the bedrock, converting it into sediment, and dumping it at the bottom of the canyon to create Catterskill Clove. Breathtaking, yes. Incredible, yes. The origin of a scenic landscape, a landscape that was certainly worth painting. No Ice Age, no paintings. Well, if you ever get a chance, and it's getting harder and harder for us to do the older we get, you climb up to a place called Poet's Ledge at the eastern end of the canyon. And from there, depending on what time of the year it is, you can take any number of wonderful photos of the canyon. We couldn't resist going up there at the height of the leaf season. Oh, this must be 20 years ago now. And that is Catterskill Clove, the product of the Ice Age. Surely, during the era of the Hudson River School of Art, there were artists gazing up there and thinking, I've got to go up there and I've got to sketch it. And I've got to turn that into art. And sure enough, Sanford Robinson Gifford, sometime about 1861, did go up to that very spot and paint the clove as it was. He cheated. There is no such thing as a waterfall up there. He painted the landscape as it should be, not so much as it was. We have found a lot of these artists cheated. I hate, I stand and I accuse. Well, excuse me, Titus, why are you showing us a picture of Niagara Falls? What does that have to do with anything today? People have been going to Niagara Falls for hundreds of years. They've been painting the falls, they've been photographing the falls, and we have a very good documentation that the Niagara Falls have been retreating. There it was in 1678, 1764, 1819, and here is where it was in the year 2011. What a remarkable thing it is. The pouring of water over the falls erodes those falls and causes them to retreat. Still, excuse me, what does this have to do with Thomas Cole? A lot. Here is Catterskill Falls as they are on a topographic map. And suddenly when we look at this, we instantly recognize that Catterskill Falls, like Niagara Falls, is the product of waterfall retreat. Over the course of the post-glacial time, Niagara Falls has retreated about 11 miles, and Catterskill Falls, a smaller waterfall, has retreated about 1 mile. Now we understand that Catterskill Falls, like Niagara Falls, is the product of a geological process called waterfall retreat.
So this is Catterskill Falls on the day that we first saw it in the morning mist. And again, it is that way a lot, but it was beautiful and mysterious and really a nice introduction to the falls for us. And of course, others have done that. Thomas Cole in 1825, again, one of the first paintings that he did of the Catskills. And Gifford in 1871. And this is one of my favorite paintings, actually, with the falls in the background. And the top of Catterskill Falls, as it is today, and as Thomas Cole painted it in 1825.
No ice age, no waterfall retreat, no paintings. Our case, I think, is getting strong. These are boulders. Oh, well, who cares? What does this have to do? Why are you showing us a picture of a bunch of big rocks? We have better things to do. They're glacial erratics. This is halfway up the Catterskill Cove Canyon. A glacier rose to that spot. A glacier pushed the boulders to that spot. It stopped advancing. It started melting. It melted away, and the boulders were left behind. We call them glacial erratics. Now, what's Harriet Canny Peel came along in 1858 and painted them. Watch what happened. Boom, boom, boom. I love doing that. She didn't cheat. She painted them pretty much as they were. Yeah, she didn't have to cheat. They were beautiful boulders. Her painting doesn't exist without the boulders. Those boulders are not there except for the Ice Age. There's a direct, immediate connection between what the glaciers did and what the artists were able to do. Now it gets better. Yep.
Now we're going to tell you a little bit about the third school, the landscape architects. The 19th century Hudson Valley was a place where American landscape architecture first developed. Its early practitioners worked with the valley's scenic landscapes to develop what are called planned views. So if you had money and you were building an estate, especially on this side of the Hudson, you got someone, a landscape architect, to give you the nicest views that you could have. With inspiration provided by nature, trees were planted, trees were cut down, roads were carefully planned, and homes were positioned to maximize their views. A planned view was a remarkable image. As we see here at Frederick Church's home, Olana, you can see the landscape framing and enhancing the view of the house. Some of the principal landscape architects were Andrew Jackson Downing, Alexander Jackson Davis, an older Frederick Church, and Calvert Vaux. And they were the principals of the planned view throughout the Hudson Valley. And you might recognize some of those names, like from the building of Central Park.
So what on earth does landscape architecture have to do with the Ice Age? And of course, the Ice Age created the landscape that they architected. Here's something I bet most of you never heard of. It's called Glacial Lake Albany. As the Hudson Valley Glacier retreated to the north, there was a lot of water, and it left behind a lake that flooded the whole of the Hudson Valley. Glacial Lake Albany. What a marvelous image this map creates. It gives you a sense of the Hudson Valley unlike anything you're likely to have ever thought of before. When you're at the bottom of the valley, think of yourself at the bottom of a lake. Well, here's a cross-section view of stratigraphy of Glacial Lake Albany. Those are the lake deposits, and here's the water level, and here's a delta. a delta deposit where streams from Elbow Creek, for example, flowed into the lake. It deposited a delta. So the story that we're going to create here is that the lake bottom created a platform when the Hudson River eroded into it, and that the delta front created a platform when it was left behind. And the landscape architects could position people's homes at the tops of these platforms and offer those homes beautiful views of the Hudson Valley.
And some of those estates that got those views that were positioned on the lake bottom are Claremont, Montgomery Place, Wilderstein, all on the lake bottom. And even their expansive lawns are lake bottom. What an astonishing way of seeing these homes with aid from the Ice Age.
So we can say no Ice Age, no landscape architecture. Landscape architecture in North America really born here in the Hudson Valley. And now, to a great extent, you understand how that could be. Let's get back to this issue of the delta. River flow, Sawkill flows into Glacial Lake Albany, carries sediment with it. It deposits that sediment, and the sediment is deposited on slanted, inclined strata, slopes. And the landscape position the houses, the locations of the houses, as you've just seen. Well, here's a big surprise. This is something you probably didn't know. Hyde Park is not only built upon a delta, Hyde Park, in fact, is a delta. You are sitting at the top of a delta at the bottom of Glacial Lake Albany right now. I turn 360 degrees, and everywhere I waved my arm was lake water. Right here, we'd all drown if we were here at that time. This is Crum Elbow Creek. It descends from the northeast. It makes a sharp turn. It forms the southern boundary of the Vanderbilt estate and then descends into the Hudson River. You can go and see it. It's a picturesque creek, especially at the south end of the Vanderbilt mansion. Johanna and I have discovered, however, that there is not just one Crum Elbow Creek, there are two. Excuse me, what did you say? There are two Crum Elbow Creeks? How can that possibly be? The second Crum Elbow Creek is this dotted line. It extends across the property of the Roosevelt estate. You are right there right now. And it descended, it doesn't descend, it descended into the Hudson River. It's dry, it's empty. There's a stream channel there, but there's no water in it. When you go out later, maybe you have a time to kill during the lunch break, go in that direction, cross the driveway, go another 50 feet and look, and you'll be looking down into the channel of that older Crum Elbow Creek. What a wonderful things we geologists discover. Now, the old Crum Elbow Creek descended to the southwest and deposited the original Crum Elbow Delta, which is in yellow. It has an elevation of 180 feet. That was the elevation of Glacial Lake Albany. Yeah, exactly. But something happened. Lake Albany dropped 10 feet. There was some place where the water escaped from the lake, drained into the Atlantic Ocean. Lake level dropped 10 feet. Crum Elbow Creek continued for a while and carved the channel that you can see there today. Whoops, how did that happen? No. Oh, that's it. That's the end of my talk. I'm going to go. Oh, no. Yeah, I'll be fine. The water level and the delta level are one and the same. The water level drops 10 feet. The second delta begins to form. Crum Elbow Creek is dislocated. It takes its modern day path, and it begins depositing a second delta, the Brown Delta, which we call the Vanderbilt Delta. We call this one the Roosevelt Delta. And these create platforms that offered the landscape architects locations to put houses for planned views.
Okay. So this is the Vanderbilt Mansion, of course, on the edge of the Hyde Park Delta. And a planned view from the top of the Delta at the Vanderbilt Mansion. And what's this? Springwood, of course, on the Hyde Park Delta top. And this is the rim trail on the edge of the Delta. And this is Springwood today. A little bit overgrown. The planned view is a little bit hard to see. But from the library, and thanks to the library, we have this image, which is the original planned view from Springwood. And you can see the river. And this is a view looking south from Alana Frederick Church's home. Another planned view that he, carved out. He even did the lake there. But we hope that from today on, that you'll look at the Hudson Valley in a way that we've come to know it, as a gift of the Ice Age. We thank you for listening, and we'd be happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
It's always hardest to get the first question, and then it's hard to shut people up.
Yes, the lady that painted the boulders, that looked like the area called Church's Ledge.
That's Swansea. Have you been to Swansea?
Yeah,
Yes,
So
just above Swansea, and at the very bottom of Bobcat Canyon, the ravine. I'm not sure I know where Church's Ledge is.
it's above Moore's Bridge.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, I think we're talking about the same thing, but we have two
Yeah.
different names.
Yeah, so the boulders and the ledge was called Church's Ledge.
Yeah.
Maybe after Frederick Church.
Next time you go there, you'll have more to look at.
I'm just curious, do you think that the landscape painters knew that these were gifts of the Ice Age?
I think that's she's more interested in that.
Some of them did. Frederick Church took a journey in the 1850s up to the Arctic to paint icebergs. And he just happened to get on the same boat as a man called Agassiz, who was the person who wrote Ice Age theory. And he was just going around the country talking to people about Ice Age theory. Now, the person who narrated or journaled Frederick Church's whole trip got very seasick. So he was never part of the conversation between Church and Agassiz. So we don't know exactly what they talked about. But that's just one instance of, yeah, we think they probably knew. Thomas Cole hung around with Dr. Silliman, who was at Yale, and he was the head geologist. And they used to go hiking together. So I imagine they discussed it, whether they believed in Ice Age theory or in Noah's flood. That's up for grabs. Nobody knows for sure. And even in the writings, the letters from Thomas Cole, nobody's been able to look at anything definitive and say, okay, they knew what they were painting. But it's a possibility.
Any more? All right, how about a round of applause for our speakers? And if you have any more questions, you can ask them while you're out buying books out in the lobby. So we'll do a quick change of the AV here and get ready for our next session. But please do go out to the lobby to the book signing.
That's your page.